Grab your beverages and turn up your interweb. Solving the world's problems 12 ounces at a time. It's Dudes and Beer.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Dudes and Beer podcast, now officially brought to you by podcastcadet.com. If you're a fan of podcasting like I am, if you have a podcast or are looking to build a podcast, podcastcadet.com is the place for you. Stop on by today. Use the code DUDES20 on your way out the door in your shopping cart, and you will save 20% off your entire purchase. They got a great group of professionals and everything, but from branding to social media campaigns to recording, engineering, editing, production, all kinds of great stuff. Stop on by. Podcastcadet.com is that website. Dudes20 is the code. Our guest tonight, once again, the amazing J.L. Carpenter of J.R. Carpenter Law and Associates, coming on shortly after she was on last time. Before she was on, we were having a conversation about her son and consent and kids going to college and things like that, and just what happens with this stuff and everything that's going on in the world around us. And literally the next day, I saw an article in USA Today talking about two students from Columbus, Ohio, and this was originally done by Jennifer Smola and Maeve Walsh out of the Columbus Dispatch. Should you get consent on video? And is that a red flag for some? There was a great video that was attached to it. Here is the audio from that right now that kind of lays this topic down for us.
Think of it as a digital prenup for a date, a short little smartphone video that says, I give my consent.
Consent is what we always want. We always want security. We always want somebody to, so I guess that is good.
I'd rather just talk to a person than do it over the internet.
It could be for right then and there, but you never know what's in the drink he just gave you. So he might have gotten consent, but you don't know what happens after that. Yeah.
These apps are so brand new that a lot of the folks we spoke to here in these bars hadn't tried them yet.
I mean, I guess in the long run, though, it kind of helps maybe. Like, as far as something bad maybe happening, if you have it recorded.
How would you feel if somebody pulled out the app before and taped you say it's okay?
I mean, I guess if I'm giving consent, then I would have to be okay with it,
I guess it's okay.
I guess that is a good idea. So that way you get the consent. So that way people can't go back and say this was rape or this was anything
No good for me.
Because you never know which way it's going to go nowadays. There's a lot of people that deserve to be drugged through the dirt for this, but, not for a bad date.
So go to the Google or Apple Play Store, do a search for consent, and you will find several free consent apps. What do you guys think of the whole consent concept? Let's talk about it on Twitter, where I'm at Jefferson Graham.
And great job, Jefferson, getting all the opinions there. Amir Reep is one of the two former Ohio State University football students arrested after being accused of raping and kidnapping a 19-year-old woman. And Columbus police say Reep told the victim to say the encounter was consensual on a video recording. That is the topic for the evening, consent, video, things like that. Welcome once again to the program, the indomitable J.L. Carpenter of J.L. Carpenter Law and Associates. How are you today, J.L.?
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me. I'm well.
Fantastic. I mean, this is such a pervasive issue in our society to begin with, much less like today, in today's society with everything. And believe me, I am in no way, shape, or form saying that the hashtag #MeToo movement was not necessary. It was absolutely one of the most necessary things to ever happen as far as the social cause movement goes.
Right.
But, until people are actively convicted, and until these things go through the legal process, until it happens, lives can be ruined, JL. And you're somebody who is witness to this on a regular basis in our system. let's kind of start cracking this nut open a little bit.
Well, I've been practicing criminal defense. Well, I've been practicing criminal law for 20 years. In the first 3 years, I was a state prosecutor. And it was a real eye-opener when I started practicing criminal defense, because I didn't realize as a prosecutor how many innocent people get arrested for offenses that they're not guilty of. And so I have seen a lot of injustice when it comes to false allegations of women against men. And then at the whole time I'm building my career, I'm raising my son. And what I kind of joked, but not really a joke, with you last time was that my son had a little bit of a different upbringing, having a criminal defense attorney as his mom, because all of these real experiences on a day-to-day basis made me extremely protective over him.
Oh, sure.
And so I felt when he got to the point of high school dating, I really needed to have frank conversations with him about liability. And thankfully, he had a high school girlfriend throughout his high school career. But, what happens if there's a high school party or a college party, or you're in your young 20s or 30s and you have a one-night stand, and what was consensual on Saturday night, on Sunday morning, is now considered rape or sexual assault. Yeah. And it's her word versus his word. And of course, when a victim comes forward saying that she's been sexually assaulted, we want to believe and we want to help her. And in fact, what infuriates me more than anything is when it's a false allegation, because when false allegations come forward from women who are not real victims, they take away the power and the voice of those who are real victims, and they dilute what people see on a regular basis in law enforcement, which is another injustice in and of itself. Yeah. But I saw your article and your video, and there were so many different perspectives. I mean, it's obviously pretty uncomfortable and not realistic to say, hey, can you give me your consent on video real quickly before we do this, But one of the attorneys in your article also suggested text messages, which is really a great idea, because usually folks are texting back and forth in a conversation that's natural. And there might be something that's there that substantiates one side versus the other. In fact, one of my kids' old high school friends had reached out to me not too long ago because he was getting an allegation from a young lady. And he said, Ms. Carpenter, I swear to you, it was consensual, and I have text messages to prove it. And he did. And we made copies of everything to back him up so that nothing would happen with that conversation.
Yeah.
Thankfully, in his case, he wasn't charged.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we do have these beautiful little computers in our pocket all the time that we actively give consent to. Like every time, like you're saying, every time you hop on that app and you're texting back and forth to somebody, whether it's a private WhatsApp conversation, what have you, that in and of itself is a form of consent to the conversation to begin with.
That's right.
Much less if you say, yeah, let's hook up, and it's in that sense, which kids are prone to do. I mean, heck, adults are prone to do it, for crying out loud. I mean, these apps wouldn't exist, like Tinder and everything else, if the hookup culture didn't exist to begin with.
No, you're absolutely right. But then, was it consensual, or did she have too much to drink that she was not able to consent? I just recently had a case like that where a client, he had been married, never cheated, was a great father. And after taking he didn't drink that night. They were all out at a wedding party. And then he takes all the girls home so they get home safely. And one of the young ladies that he barely knew suggested that he take her business that they all knew each other from, so that she could meet up with this guy that was going to come pick her up. Well, I think that guy blew her off. And she came on to the married man. He had put himself in a situation he shouldn't have been in. And one thing led to another. And her actions, and she said it was sexual assault. That man went through hell with his business, his wife, his family, for 2 years, until finally a grand jury threw out the case and said there wasn't any evidence there.
Wow. Wow, and that's just it. Like we've done episodes on this show about doxing, and it's become a big thing now. And don't get me wrong, like I'm a fan of Batman, but Batman is pretend, folks. Unfortunately, police go through great means of investigation before charges are filed, things like that, typically. And most of the time, whenever these doxing situations are happening where somebody is putting up people's home addresses, things like that, they are not necessarily taking into consideration the other people that are impacted by these statements and by these actions. And it's odd that these people lose everything, yet at the same time, trying to hold the doxers actively responsible is getting harder and harder, it seems.
And circumstances definitely, obviously, law enforcement look at the whole picture. And circumstances, since this young lady was in trouble with her parents, and so story says she could get herself out of trouble the next morning, and so she practiced it on her girlfriend. It worked on her girlfriend. One with mom, but there was a lot of inconsistencies and things that did not add up. And she had told law enforcement that she had previously been raped, but she did not know that guy's name, as if it was just a stranger. She also said that she was so intoxicated she could not have consented, but she could name exactly every drink she had that night.
Yeah.
And also when she went to the hospital the next day, she had no blood alcohol left in her system. So it was already out of her system, but yet she couldn't remember anything, you know? So, but the circumstances definitely lend themselves. But once the ball gets rolling, of course, law enforcement has an obligation to, finish their investigation and then turn it over to the district attorney and the grand jury and see where it goes from there. Lucky for this man, he's starting now to be able to rebuild his life and heal his marriage and move forward. But 2 years of hell.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, able to salvage his marriage, things like that. Like you said, business becomes affected, all kinds of things. And whenever you're talking about youth, especially, that is something that will follow you. Even just the pending charge can dog you for the rest of your life, whether you're acquitted or not.
That's right.
Whether you're acquitted or not. Like I said in our last episode, mine was a possession violation, and it popped up when I went to go rent my house. I can't imagine if it's a suspected rape violation or something like that.
Oh, anytime somebody hears the word sexual assault or indecency or or sexual assault of a child, and the child could be 16 years old. But anytime people hear anything that's related to those types of cases, we all get this ugly image in our heads. I mean, when I pick a jury in these types of cases and the jurors find out what kind of case it is, it's on their face of disgust. And that's what you start with on the defense, right?
Yeah.
But once they start to listen in mind to all the evidence, then we start to have a chance. But, and it doesn't have to be a one-night hookup, because there are times I've represented guys who are in well-established relationships.
Yeah.
Might be off and on. They've been seeing each other for years.
Yep.
And then one night she's mad and says, no, this time it was not consensual.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like I said, these situations happen in horrible cases. But we've started to see so many more of these issues of consent popping up on both sides of the line.
Right.
And how can people start to actively consider this in their life? Because as these apps like Tinder and everything else grow, guaranteed. I mean, the only thing that pops into my head regularly is I guess nobody remembers why Craigslist stopped having the hookup page.
Yeah.
That was because people started getting killed in the Boston area.
Well, and I don't want to sound like an old fuddy-duddy.
Hey, me neither. I'm a pretty hip guy.
It made me think that with all of this, that maybe it's a good thing because maybe people will spend more time getting to know each other and actually court and actually have a dating process and not just jump in bed.
There is something to be said about that, most definitely. I'm a fuddy-duddy like you. That's just how I am. I understand. I got friends that I tour on the road with and things like that. And typically there's one night during the week where they're like, all right, guys, I'm not heading out to dinner. I'll see y'all later. And we all know what's going on. We've seen them on their app the last few days. We've heard the lunch conversations. And we're all grown folk, but it is one of those like, man, I don't know if that is a scene that I would liably put myself in.
Right.
Where like this is a liability situation straight up. Yeah.
Another is I recently had a case where a young lady claimed that her boyfriend had been holding her against her will, and so she charged with unlawful restraint. And they had been out of town. They come back to Houston. Well, thankfully for this guy, he had a video camera, security camera outside facing. He had one when you enter the house on the first floor, and he had one at the top of the stairs that focused on the second floor. And so because of the video clippings, we were able to piece together their entire evening. So from the moment that they pulled into his driveway, he was unloading the vehicle from their trip and left everything except for her suitcase. Took everything out except for her suitcase. That stayed in. And it was obviously a female suitcase. She just walked around inside and outside the house with her dogs, feeding her dogs. She had her cell phone with her. If she was being held against her will, she could have called 911.
Yeah.
She had plenty of time to be in the house by herself while he was outside. And then it shows where she's making trips from the master bedroom to the bathroom, and she takes in clothes to obviously bathe and come back out, and she's in pajamas, and just made herself at home at his home. And at no time did she look like she was being held against her will. But had he not had those videos, then it was her word versus his word.
Yeah, absolutely. And this just, we said it in the last episode when we were talking about consent to search, protecting your Fourth Amendment rights. The facts of from the moment that police officer decides to pull you over, when he calls into dispatch and says, "Dispatch, I have this vehicle with this description and this plate," from that point, he is building his case.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're going through and reading this article and you talk to, you read the quote from Brian Koffel, the defense attorney over here. He's talking about, like, I advise all of my clients to get written consent for sexual acts, even if it's just a text message or any sort of audio or video recording indicating consent. If they don't, he said, in this climate, they're going to suffer some consequence. And then followed by that was the attorney defending Harvey Weinstein.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, if I was a man in today's world, before I was engaging in sexual behavior with any woman, I would ask them to sign a consent form. We probably need to come up with like a little wallet tear book of consent forms. You know, like, I mean, we could make a mint, JL.
How do you take how do you take the romance out of it, right?
I know. So, I've had a great time tonight. You know, you want to just sign this?
Yeah, people thought condoms were uncomfortable subjects.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I remember when that subject was utterly disarmed for our generation, when Naked Gun came out and they were wearing the full body condom. It was like, okay, all right, that's good job. You know, you finally turned the uncomfortable conversation into something hilarious that we can all relate to.
But, you know, Chris, if you think about it, though, from beginning to end, if an allegation is made and the police follow up and do their investigation and they decide that there's something there that they need to go ahead and consult with the district attorney then accepts charges at the level of probable cause, which is not much. Doesn't have to be a whole lot of evidence. Yeah. The person's going to have a warrant issued for them. Then they get arrested. They get booked. They have to make a bond if they can make a bond. Bonds can be pretty expensive depending on the jurisdiction. They get out on bond, then they have to hire a criminal defense attorney. These are not cheap cases. I mean, if you want a good criminal defense attorney on this type of case, you're going to pay anywhere from $25,000 on up. And that may not even include a jury trial. That's just the retainer to get you through the initial part of the defense. Yeah. So they're expensive. And then the whole time they've got this cloud hanging over their head. People are making comments on social media. They can't get jobs. They can't rent houses. And people judge them because of what they're being charged with. You know, I mean, it's just brutal on the mentality, the mind, the spirit, and especially if it's not true.
Yeah. And, you know, I just posted an article about from the Texas Association of Broadcasters saying that news organizations will stop using mugshots when reporting on crimes. And somebody in my group on the Dudes and Beer group was like, oh, I guess no more shaming them. And I was like, here's the thing, though. Most of the time when they're reporting that trial is still going on. Mm-hmm. Like the person is still technically accused. So when you're showing the mugshot, most people think that's taken after conviction. It's not. Right. No. And that immediately puts the veneer over it of this person is guilty. It immediately taints anybody who might be a possible juror that may have heard about it on the news, seen it in the newspaper, anything like that. Which, I mean, right. as an attorney, how hard is it now, especially for a high-profile case, to even be able to find an impartial jury, people that have not? I mean, do you just have to find hermits? Like, no, how does that work?
I really think that there's an art to picking a jury, and that's my favorite part of trials. That's my strength. But I really think you win or lose a case through jury selection. And the key is to get the citizens talking. And when they start talking and they tell you about their personal experiences and their biases and their beliefs and what they've been through, when they open up and you learn about their experiences, you get a real feel for who might be a good juror and who might not. And what I mean by that is someone who can sit and listen to all the evidence before making a decision and not start off already leaning towards the state or already leaning towards the defense. You know, it's great when I have a juror out there in the panel that is rooting for the defense, but when they tell the state and the judge that, they're gone. You know? Yeah,
exactly. Guess who got checked off their list?
Yeah, if you can't be fair, you don't get to play. So, but no, if the lawyer who is picking the jury can't get the folks out there to start talking, and I always say the quiet ones are the ones that get chosen because you don't know anything about the quiet ones. And so you have to get everybody that's on the panel to start talking so you can know who you have that's going to be sitting there in judgment of your client when your client's justice, liberty, freedom, life are all at stake.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, if there's anything in there that may have clouded things, that may have been done illegally to obtain evidence, anything like that, you gotta be there for it. And I would challenge all of my audience, you know, because jury duty is one of those things that nobody wants to do, JL. Nobody wants to do it, man. But like, dude, it is the greatest civic duty that you can have to sit on a jury, to sit on any jury.
It really is.
And if anything, folks, in this like karmic day and age, think about it as paying it forward. If you would like your family member to have somebody as impartial as you on a jury, go serve on a jury. Seriously. And just so you know, folks, if you wonder why you haven't been called for jury duty, it's probably because you haven't registered to vote. Go register to vote.
I think now they're pulling them from their driver's license numbers.
Yes, because so many people were not registering to vote.
That's right.
Yeah, so so
I can already tell we're getting a different pool of people now. We're not just getting retired folks and people who are unemployed.
Yeah.
You know, we're getting a full spectrum of our peers, of the mix of society.
And have you as a defense attorney noticed a difference in that? Has that been for the better or for the worse for you guys? For the system as a whole?
I don't know if I've had enough time since they've changed the system over to really be able to give a fair representation on the effects. But I do know that it sure is nice to have somebody who works in computers all day, who's on the jury, and they have to look at something that's analytical, or, you know, somebody, just different skill sets that they're able to bring and use that as their thought process as we're going through the evidence in a trial.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's just it. It's one of the most noble things you can do for a society. If you're ever wondering about how you can pay it back, that's how, man. Don't get out of jury duty. Don't do it.
Yeah.
You know, like if you're a doctor or something like that, you know, like, yeah, you know, different story perhaps, but man, go do it.
On my last trial, that I had, it was a capital murder case. And even though she didn't want to do it, we had a doctor on our panel, on our jury, and it lasted probably a month. And everyone had to work around their schedules and their plans and their families. And, but, it ended in a hung jury. They couldn't agree. And so the case is going to be retried, but the doctor took the time and she listened to everything, and her vote was for not guilty.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just it. Like you may be the juror that brings common sense to the table on occasion.
Yeah.
You know, you may be the one that hangs the jury and at least gives somebody some time for new defense to be formed. Things like that. And hey, if it comes to the point of a hung jury to begin with, good on you.
Well, and that brings me to another point, Chris, is that I had a case where a stepdad was being accused by stepdaughter of touching her. And, but what the jury was not allowed to know, during trial, which I fought like heck to get this into evidence, is that the little girl first accused grandpa of the same thing. And both of them were being charged at the same time. And it just so happened stepdad's case went to trial first, and grandpa passed away. But I was unable to get it in evidence in front of this jury that she had this other allegation first against grandpa. And that grandpa had a lot more time with her in the afternoons. He picked her up from school, you know, he had, and so it was one woman who found my client not guilty and hung the jury. One woman saved this man's life. And after the trial was hung and we were going to have to do a new trial, the judge asked the jurors if they had known that information, would that have changed their minds? And they all said yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, so frequently, I mean, good God, man, they got a whole Netflix category dedicated to this, folks. So frequently are these the cases where just sometimes even extreme means are taken to obfuscate those things and to move them around and shift them to where that they are not available in discovery, that they are not available for use with the jury. not submissible into evidence. And, you know, the fact that there are people like you out there working to, and, you know, you can say what you want about defense attorneys, folks, until the day that you need a defense attorney.
That's right.
Like, I'm just here to tell you, until the day that you need good representation, until the day that you need somebody as an advocate on your side, don't ever forget, people, that is what the term counsel, spelled with the S-E-L, means, is advocate. It is a voice specifically for you. And such an amazing thing. Now, going back to the concept of consent here, JL, with our digital day and age and everything going on, with the speed of that and the way that law is typically about 10 paces behind technology, what do you see for the future of consent, especially when it comes to kids and technology, their rapid use of it and adaptation to it?
You know, I just think that regardless of technology, because there's always going to be, just in the article that you had posted and that you played, you know, there's two sides to every argument. It's, oh, this is a good idea, or no, this looks sketchy, and you were just preparing yourself because you knew what you were going to do, and you were going to violate this girl, and you wanted to get consent ahead of time, you know. So there's going to be arguments on either side. I think what it comes down to is that we have to make good choices for ourselves. We have to be smart. We have to educate ourselves. We have to be wise on our circumstances and who we're hanging out with. And I really just think that it comes down to the choices we make and the people we hang out with. And so that's why I tell my kids friends, you know the people you're with, you know, who wants to get in trouble with somebody and they, you know, if they didn't know this person was carrying dope on them, or, you know your circumstances, know the people you're with, and know who you're hanging out with, and especially if you're going to have sex with them. But, you know, if you're in public and you're hanging out and you're having drinks and friends know where you are and you've got conversation and text messages, and, you know, I just think that there's a way that your circumstances can help to prove what the truth is. Sure.
And that's not to victim blame. That's not to say that people make bad decisions. And even like the lady said halfway through the video that we played at the top of the show, great, you've given your consent on video. What did he put in your drink before he took that?
That's right.
You know, and at that point, what's out the window? What isn't? How do people have to guard themselves against that, JL? How do they? I mean, is there a way other than just watching who you hang out with? I mean, because, we're talking about a lot of people that don't know each other here in this situation. Yeah.
No, and I just think there's nothing that's going to be airtight and that's going to be 100% bulletproof. So that's why I say we have to be responsible and take responsibility for our own actions. But, you know this about me too, Chris, is that I am a voice for women who are true victims, and I help advocate for women who are true victims, whether it's domestic violence or whether it's sexual abuse, or just women who are down on their luck, whether it's substance abuse and they need to get help so they can get back on their feet, be the moms they need to be. I will be there to help a woman in a heartbeat. So I don't want the context of the conversation we're having to make it seem as if I'm against women, because that's far from the truth. But in this conversation, I'm specifically talking about false allegations, because there's definitely, clients that I turn away, that come in and try to hire. And once I learn more about the situation or the case, I don't think it's a good fit for me. And so I won't take the case. Other attorneys might take it, or, whatever. But anyway, I just think that when it comes to false allegations, we just have to be smart.
Yeah. And I mean, just to back that up, folks, further down in the article, Dan Sabel Mallory said he would feel concerned if a client obtained written or recorded consent from a sexual partner. quote, "That'd be a red flag," he said. "It might look as though they're trying to cover their tracks. Just because someone says it is consensual on video does not make it so." And absolutely, you know, how many times do we hear the actual defense of a confession was given under duress, things like that. And even much so in the same way, allegations given under duress, given in fitful moments, things like that. So it's a hard line that you guys in the legal community have to toe with this. It's so entirely hard to sometimes get to the bottom of things, get to the truth of things. On occasion, it is like glaring in your face. But whenever you're talking about like the case of these two young students from Columbus, not so much. Their accuser is saying the same thing that your client's accuser was, where they had falsely imprisoned her. Now, what does that actually mean? Whenever somebody is accused of falsely imprisoning someone. Yeah. So in your article, they talk about specifically kidnapping, taking somebody and holding them against their will, and but in unlawful restraint in this situation, it was that she might have been there willingly at first, but she was being held thereafter against her will. And she said she was intimidated because he had a gun. Well, they both had guns. They had gone to a ranch for a hunting weekend, and she was just an avid hunter as he was. So she knew how to use guns just as well as he did. But again, because the video, it shows when he exited the truck, when they got to his Houston home, that he took his weapon out from his pants and put it under the truck and then locked the truck up. And I know the truck was locked from the video because when she came back out to get food for her dogs, she had to use the code on the side of the truck to unlock the truck and get the food out, which then she would have had access to the gun that she was fearful of, So, but again, it comes down to circumstances. Yeah. And it's so important, especially if you have kids, folks, to start teaching them these things, to really start with young gentlemen explaining the concept of courtesy, explaining the concept of what no means and accepting that and being okay with that. And same thing with girls. Educating them on what date rape is and protecting their drink and not drinking too much and making sure that they have girlfriends with them. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And making sure that you have friends that are friends enough that whenever you're like, hey man, something doesn't feel right, that they're okay with it. Yeah. That's probably one of the biggest ones, I would say, is making sure that you're all right enough to just leave when that situation happens. But I will say one more thing about this, that don't send nude photos via text when you're trying to get consent. That is against the law. Yes. Yes. And let's go into that for a second, if we can, JL, because that is so entirely commonplace now. The actual doctor from the sexting documentary was actually just murdered. They're trying to solve her murder right now. She was thrown from a balcony. Apparently went to go see somebody that was an addict and things went crazy. We're trying to figure it out. But it's, when you're talking about this culture of sexting, everything else, like I said, it is pervasive. It's out there. It's all over the place. How do you defend against that? How do you? Well, my daughter and her girlfriends, we've had this conversation many times. You're not going to get a nude out of my daughter. So, good. Just don't do it. Just don't do it.
because they never go away. You never know whose hands they're going to go into. You know, you might think, I'll just send this to my sweet boyfriend right now, and they're 16 or 17, and then, you know, he gets slighted, they break up, he gets mad, he shows the whole football team, the whole baseball team, and then everybody's going to start rumors, and it's going through everyone's phones like wildfire. You know, just don't put yourself in that situation. But if you do send an unwanted nude to somebody, it's a crime in Texas now. That's the new law.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That is an absolute crime in Texas. How about that? I had no idea. The things you learn on Dudes and Beer, everybody.
Everybody watch their texting when they're drinking.
watch their P's and Q's, so to say.
Yeah. That's right. And I tell you, we could go on and on about all of this, but when I saw the article that you had sent me after our last conversation on your show about, you know, I mentioned at the end of, you know, raising a young man in this culture, it's super scary. It's super scary. And I'll tell you one last case that I had before I have to leave you. But many years ago, when I first started practicing criminal defense, I had a guy hire me, and his girlfriend's daughter was 14, and she was coming on to him, and he was telling her no. And she went to school and told her counselor that he had been having sex with her. And so he gets charged with sexual assault of a child. He owned a trucking company. He was in business for himself. He couldn't afford to make bonds and also pay my fee to represent him.
Yeah.
So he stayed in jail for 90 days and lost his truck. He lost his business. And he stayed in jail long enough for me to be able to pull together a presentation for the grand jury. And what ended up happening was that the little girl's medical records showed that she had an STD that my client did not have. And I think that was the final nail that was able to help the grand jury find him, that there was not enough probable cause to go forward. So they threw out his case and he was released, but he had to start all over. He had no business, no money, no truck. Now he has this charge on him that even though it was thrown out, the arrest is still on his record.
That's
until
right.
He can get that expunged years later. Yeah. And so, and there's no payback for that, right? Because the government's immune from being sued, and the complainant comes to the government does their job, and, you know, it's just a process. So there's no way he can go back and blame somebody and try to get compensation for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, the government can't be sued, at least not in cases like that. So,
right.
Yeah, it's a horrible circumstance for everybody involved. But especially those that are wrongfully accused. Those are the ones that we're talking about in this episode, folks. The victims of these situations are absolutely on a different level. But when you're talking about people that have been accused of this and have, number one, already been criminalized before they go through the process. The fact that these stories are hitting the news, things like that, before they go through the legal process. I think that's a big issue that we need to deal with. Unfortunately, like the Texas Association of Broadcasters said, there are things being put forth right now within the industry to say, stop doing that. You can cover the story, but stop showing mugshots, that kind of stuff. So that's going to go a long way, we hope, in this not swaying juries process, and trying to keep things fair on all sides, because it really does make it to where your job can, in some cases, be almost impossible, just because of the public message that has been put out regarding a case, despite the facts.
So I just ask everyone, keep an open mind until you hear the evidence. Keep an open mind.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's exactly what this show is about, is the open mind, is the fact of just read all of it. Wait until everything comes in before you make up your mind. JL, thank you so much for coming on yet again and breaking open topics like this in such a great way, being able to really come in as a lawyer and kind of give a different point of view rather than just the average news reader or investigative journalist that we typically have on. And you got some.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You got some great lauds from the last lawyer we had on. She had apparently heard the episode with you on it before she came on, and then started doing some research into you and was like, wow, she is great.
Awesome.
Matt,
thank you.
Absolutely. Make sure to tell everybody where they can go and the contact information that they should have for J.L. Carpenter Law and Associates before they get into the DWI, DUI situation, or before they have anything happen to them.
Sure, thanks. When my kids were young, they joked because I go by JL, like the letters JL, and they said, if you go to jail, call JL.
Yeah.
But it stuck. It's become my slogan. So you can find my website at jlcarpenterlaw.com, and our office 713-201-6767 in Houston.
Fantastic. Well, JL, thank you so much once again for coming on. Can't wait to have you on again. I'm sure that there will be another hot button topic that hits the news lines that one of the two of us will be like, we need to talk about this. So
you bet.
Don't ever hesitate. Please do hold the line while we close things out. Thank you so much for being on. While you're online checking out everything with jlcarpenterlaw.com, make sure to go on by dudesandbeer.com. That is where you can find all the episodes. That's where you can find out. There are links there to JL's website. That's where you can go to get your copies of the Constitution on the Knowledge Vault. Make sure to stop on by hcuniversalnetwork.com, our parent network. Tons of great shows and entertainment there. Until next time, everybody, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and remember, if you can't be good at it. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Dudes and Beer Podcast. To listen to our audio streams or chat with us live, download the official Dudes and Beer app for Android and iDevices, available on Google Play and iTunes markets. For more episodes, content, and information, visit us online at dudesandbeer.com. You can also find our episodes on Breach.tv, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast service. Dudes and Beer is a proud member of the HC Universal Network family of podcasts. For more about our sponsors and other podcasts on this network, visit hcuniversalnetwork.com. Thanks for listening, everybody, and until next time, drink responsibly.